Good to go, Rick.
Okay, it is past 5:15. We don't have a quorum here, but we'll go ahead and get started. The only person there's Lucas. This is the Non-Motorized Travel Advisory Council meeting for December 12th. I'll call the meeting to order. It is 5:17, so in attendance we have myself, Greg Worth, the chair, Lucas Wallace, Joel Ebert. I did hear from Kevin Reckoff. He is out of town for work and will try and join us when he can here. I have not heard from James. So, and then
James.
oh,
I'm here. Hello.
Hi, James.
I could barely hear him, but I'm not sure where he's coming.
Hey, can you hear me now? Is that better?
Much better.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. And so sports staff, we have David Knopke with the city of Helena, and then Jason Zander is online. Is Sarah online?
Not yet. That I see.
Okay. And then members of the public, we have Ann Houserath, Logan Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Chrysler.
Greg, are you on?
I am on the Zoom. Yeah, could you?
I just want to double check that one might not be, that might be Sarah, but just was double checking that you were logged in as well.
I am. Yep. Okay. So the meeting minutes from last month, November meeting, we had no action minutes, so don't need to approve any minutes. So we'll just move on to agenda items. City staff update. David, the floor is yours.
I'm sure my phones aren't going to interrupt us. The ADA inventory update. They're still proceeding along with all their information or their data processing. We have training with them on site next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so they'll be here now. Introduce city staff to the software, and then starting to get some of the dashboards set up so we can roll that out hopefully. School zone, we met with the middle school or the school district at the middle school. We came up with some changes. The loading zone, no parking loading zones will be removed along Idaho and basically grayed out for parking. They're hoping to encourage some parents to use the parking instead of the loop that they have kind of established, because I guess that gets kind of congested in the and drop off and pick up, but then it only gets exacerbated by when they have snow piled up, because they only have so much room to push snow around there that it gets smaller and smaller as the winter goes. So that'll be no parking. We'll be installing school zone signs on every perimeter street around the middle school.
That include so all perimeter. That Helena Avenue on the north.
Perimeter.
Awesome.
Otherwise, it would be a perimeter. Could come up with a witty answer for you there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it will. So the school zone will start basically before the signal at Rodney and Helena Avenue, and then it will end just after Idaho. And
okay. And those. Oh, sorry.
So those signs will be the regular school zone signs, and then we have because of the business area and everything, we have when children are present, so that it's not 100% enforceable, or it's not enforceable, you know, at night or outside school hours or outside the school area. Children are present, the school zone is still, we figured that that would be better than just saying sometimes, because there are events outside of the police. So this captured kind of everything outside of that. So.
And when will those signs be installed?
They're on order. We don't have supplementary signs. So they were put on order last week. A big backlog on those supplementary signs, so they should be coming in.
Okay.
And then they'll get those installed.
So within a month, everything should be.
Yeah. So I haven't heard of any for the shipping. So.
Okay.
Centennial Trail easement. I got an email back saying that they needed something else, or they didn't want the exhibits right now. That's farther along in the process. I sent an email back and said the railroad, and you know, if I can get any more assistance, please contact me. And that's the last one. So I'll have a good update for you on the.
Yeah, but you're continuing with the course. It's not silent anyway.
No, there's those.
Yeah.
So we'll hopefully get that one done. The Benton Trail transfer station entrance. So the state is still proceeding with their project for the rail arm crossings. They're removing those. With that project, they're doing a pedestrian crossing on the east side of Benton across the tracks to tie up to the existing Centennial Trail. And then we've split the turn lane project into deciding how we're going to split that so that we can see how we can best use or get the better bids, and we'll be putting that out probably in January for the curb and gutter along Benton.
Because the entrance is done, the gate and all that.
The gate is done, but the entrance that's ultimately designed has a drop lane on the northbound side so that cars can get out of the traffic lane and pull in. It has a turn lane within the existing right of way for a left turn in. It has the pedestrian facilities. It connects. So I'll have to remind myself to bring a diagram, but as you walk around that, you curve around towards the transfer station, and then there's a crossing for pedestrians to get over to the trail. And then that way they're not crossing that big wide throat. They're right at the entrance. We put it back to where they're crossing a shorter distance. And then there's some other, they always had issues with folks showing up after hours, and they would be towing trailers, and then it was the EEE with people that are not used to driving trailers getting stuck in there. So they did prep the turnaround for that situation, but that's just going to be, I mean, it's basically just going to be road base, so that if somebody needs the extra room to turn around to get out of the transfer station entrance, it's not a big deal. And then there's built into that fence and that curve, working with Carroll College, there's a, lack of a better term, overflow entrance exit for their parking lot for during events, so that they don't get bottlenecked up at that only exit entrance up there by the new activity center. So, but those will be used on a pretty rare basis.
So can we see what's happening there?
Yeah, I can get what Public Works has going on there. It's not our project, so.
But it's a city project, yeah. Because sounds like are we widening the crossing distance?
Well, that's terrible now. So
Exactly.
I'm sure it's an improvement.
So there's a slip lane with a median island that's encompasses that. So this pump house right here and here, those have to be protected because that's part of Carroll's infrastructure. So that drop lane will be actually before that that wellhead, and then pump house will be on the median island, and basically the median island will extend over to where the existing curb is. And then exiting, there'll be a left or a right turn lane. There won't be just that single lane that ends up blocking the pedestrian crossing. And then I don't remember exactly, but it comes down, the pedestrian turn lane comes, or the sidewalk comes around here, and then there's a crossing right here to bring, or somewhere in there to bring you over to Centennial Trail, so that it's a shorter crossing distance to get you away from the vehicles that are turning. And so.
Can't we just narrow the entire approach?
No, because there's garbage trucks going in and out. You have to accommodate for services, so. Let's see.
Does the Centennial Trail crossing along Benton Avenue get wider with this project?
The crossing?
Yeah.
No, there was no. It gets, we tie in all the facilities to the trail, but not right there at the crossing itself.
Okay,
So, sorry, just to, I know I've asked this question before, but when you're talking about the easement, and this is where you're trying to get easement to realign it.
Yeah, let me bring that back up. I can find the mouse.
Because I mean, the crossing is, one side is 25 yards from the other side of it.
So right now you have to cross here and go down to get onto the trail, down here to get to the trail. The easement that comes along is along this old railroad bed is what's being requested, where it ties in closer to the southern edge of the airport property, and then it will come along Arnie Park here along the south edge there, and then it'll tie into the existing trail here because of there's some constraints here along these, and then this over here we have blocked out. Again, there's an area there to block out for any structure that gets put in there, and then the trail pretty much follows the established trail out to tie into the existing out here where there's already paved on asphalt trail, just right around the end of those storage units.
And then the state is putting in a railroad crossing on Benton, kind of on the east side of it.
Yes, so there'll be pedestrian crossings on both sides of that.
and that'll connect all the way down to Centennial Trail.
That's going to go across, not for Terra anymore, but the concrete precast plant there, it'll go across there, entrance down to Centennial Trail, and then it will connect to where the trail left off when we did the bed path.
And are we gonna get rid of that little wing wall on the concrete ramp? On the the trip hazard?
I haven't seen their plans. The state's been running that project.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. I asked for
know
it to be removed when
I
they
know they've
paved
been-
it. Yeah.
I know their biggest issue about a month ago was still trying to figure out what the pedestrian crossing across the tracks looked like, whether it was gonna be perpendicular or it was gonna be skewed, because pros and cons either way. The railroad has ideas, the state has ideas, we had ideas, and I don't know if they've come to a final resolution on that.
That use it have ideas too.
So is that planned this summer? Or is it gonna be further away than that?
So that whole rail arm signals is supposed to have been done this, the year following the Bend Trail, completion. So I'm not gonna pretend to know where, I think they have it scheduled out in 25 or 26, but it seemed to be, seems to change.
Allow me to share my screen, Steve.
Do they have a timeline for when the state is going to approve the plans, or?
There's a meeting, I think it's this week or next week, that
Okay.
they're talking through some of these. If you're being promoted.
Yep.
I'm showing it either one.
Yep, there. Oh, you'll have to enable screen sharing now, so I'm not.
Besides the trip hazard, has this committee had any other concerns with that crossing, or?
Well, we had a walk audit there. And so, I don't know if there were concerns, but kind of a number of just general recommendations of, not so much that crossing in particular as, the batch fields there more generally, 3 or so trails come together there.
Mhm.
And so, we had kind of thought it would be nice if they all kind of come together in a strange parking lot that is really kind of unattractive, and maybe if they're,
Can you scare it out?
Mhm.
yeah, there's
No, I got demoted to an attendee again.
some facilities or something that made that more attractive or kind of promoted all the mini trails that we have,
Mhm.
and clearly made the connection between them.
Sure.
That's what I recall, that there was other sort of recommendations and stuff as part of that.
No. Oh, yeah, I think you have to make me a co-host. Can you make
I'll
me?
try it.
So it's this screen over here. So it's this trip hazard. You know, that's that little wing wall in the back there. That needs to be removed. It's just a if you're riding your bike, you don't even see it until you're off of it. And then, my vision is that this would just be a standard curb sidewalk, boulevard sidewalk that extends across. Not showing there.
I can see your mouse moving.
What's that?
I can see your mouse moving.
It's not showing up there.
Yeah.
I can see it. I can see my cursor, but it's not moving. Oh. But anyway, obviously this wing wall needs to be removed, especially for tying in this way. And then I would envision just make this into a boulevard sidewalk and go a standard drive approach across here, so it's all one level for somebody in a wheelchair or pushing a stroller. It's kind of you're watching Joel Pete and teeter going down those curb ramps on an angle like that. That's what I think is the preferable alternative.
Else?
No, but can we? So you're going to bid the project in January? That
the curb and gutter for north of the tracks. The transfer station entrance. There's nothing on the slate that I know of, but it's a public works contract.
Oh, so these are two separate projects. Gotcha. And so the curb and gutter, that's the widening project we've been talking about.
It's the turn lane project.
The widening project that we prefer not to do. Just so MTAC members are aware that you'll have to bid it and wait till our recommendation will not to award the contract.
Prerogative.
Yeah.
So moving on.
I'm sorry, could I bring up something?
Yes, I'm sorry, and members of the public, I would ask you, I'm probably not good enough as a host to, if you feel like you want to interject and ask a question, I think we can be kind of casual here. So yes, if you would like to ask a question.
Okay. I wasn't prepared for this, but you're talking about Centennial Trail, which I'm very familiar with, and seeing that reroute of the trail to sort of the abandoned railroad track to meet with the current trail farther down.
Mm-hmm.
There is a huge growth of, I was asking my wife, 10-petal blazing star that is just a unique, gorgeous, beautiful, wild Montana plant along the abandoned railroad tracks. Hawk moths. There was a story in the newspaper about it. Just raising that as a subject of, I don't know too much about that plant. I just discovered it this late summer. It just is that. I guess it would be nice to continue to exist.
Yeah, thank you. That's not anything we've heard, so thank you.
Yeah, the kind of south side of the current trail, just right along the abandoned railroad tracks. My wife is calling it 10-petal blazing star, but there's a local naturalist, Shane Sater, who sort of discovered it. Kevin League or somebody somebody just sort of took pictures, and I think it was published. So anyway.
Yeah, so it's not gonna go on the south side of the abandoned railroad bed. It's actually going on top of the abandoned railroad bed. Is where the trail would go, because
You just take the existing bed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Basically, probably knock off the top if there's
that
any,
makes sense.
if there's any existing old railroad ties in there, those would have to be removed, but there's some pros for both sides of this railroad bed, so we capped it, and the railroad is more amenable to that than other places. The problem with the existing Centennial Trail is we have the right to be there, but the way the easement language is written is it can't be improved.
Hey, yeah,
So the only way to get an improved trail is to move it farther away from their tracks, and then everything along that new stretch would be fenced. So there would be the ability, unless you scale the fence, to cross the railroad tracks. So that was another condition of the easement, was that as we improve the trail, we fence it as we go.
With the flower, it's not in the old
it's
top of the rail bed,
no, yeah,
so it could probably, you know,
It probably could be, protected in place.
Yep.
We need to be aware of it, so.
interesting.
thanks.
Lawrence and the Last Chance. We had a consultant working on that to basically document the intersection, go take it through signal warrants, come up with some solutions. Those we'll have those either presented here or at his commission meeting, probably after the first of the year, since the 18th. Tomorrow's and the 18th of the last commission meetings of the year, I believe. So they'll just present the recommendations. The impetus behind this was the grading crossings that are there that were done in that stamped brick, stamped concrete that look like bricks, and several utility projects that have gone through there, making crossings more challenging than they need to be. My intersection study, they come up with some ideas to incorporate at the intersections downtown. That's where we are with that one. Sidewalk Summit for policy side stuff is going to be January 4th. January 4th up over in 326. I do not recall the time. I want to say 4 to 6.
The admin.
It's the same admin time. It's not an admin meeting. It's an actual work session. There we'll be talking about the results from the data collection and the inventory. How much sidewalks do we have? How many missing sidewalks? What's compliant? What's not compliant? How many ADA ramps do we have? What missing, compliant, non-compliant kind of, and then basically put in a price tag to what it would take to put in all the missing, what it would take to bring everything non-compliant up. So that'll be presented. That'll be one of the first items presented. Then the second item right now that's on the agenda is funding options. What funding opportunities does the commission have to get the sidewalks put in? Which there's limited funding, but there's funding out there. The biggest thing that I think that the challenge would be is to have a consistent funding source. There's a lot of grants out there right now for rehabilitation and construction, but they're going to die out. So I think a consistent funding source so that it's predictable moving forward, that we're going to do a mile of sidewalk a year, we're going to do whatever it ends up being. I think that's the goal, so that everyone can say, yes, this is what's on next year's, this is what's on the year after, and move on from there.
And that's where we can start like strategizing an implementation plan of possibly if it's a mile or where we want to look at certain blocks to.
So with the new software, we can do some strategizing on corridors or start, we've already talked to them about the possibility of starting at the schools and basically working out blocks at a time or whatever it ends up being. I mean, it really depends on the funding level. Do we want it done in 10 years? Do we want it done in 20 years? Do we know what that funding level is to really say, well, we'll be able to do this many blocks or this many miles of sidewalk a year. So FY25 budget, that is there's a budget amendment for the MPO staff person coming up on December 18th. That's just to get the funding in place so that PL, the way the MPO works, it's a reimbursable monies from the feds and the states. So the entities have to put up the money to hire the person, and then we get reimbursed on a quarterly basis. So that budget amendment is just for get the money in place so we can advertise, so we can bring on an MPO person, at least in the as far at the beginning of the process as possible, so they don't have as much catch up to play.
And then like you'll start working on the FY25 budget like January.
Yes.
And yeah.
So we're working on it. We're talking about things with the rollout of the new accounting software. That's kind of we're still working on it, but as far as like entry and looking how it's affecting budgets, is kind of being dictated by the rollout of the new ERP system, because they want to enter the budget into the new ERP system. So it's going to fluctuate a little bit with that, but generally, yes, we'll be starting that in late January.
Yeah, and I just asked, I'd like to be involved in the first draft of the budget.
So there'll be budget work sessions with the commission by department. Those will be published. So that's the preliminary presentation to the.
So it's like basically unchanged from last year on that first.
I don't know what you mean by unchanged. I mean, we basically start with status quo, what we had last year, assuming that's what we'll get this year as far as revenues, and then wet maintenance and CIP items fit within that budget.
Okay, but that's, I guess, what your direction is, that for us to be engaged with the budget, it's at the budget session.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do anything. We're not going to get any engagement just individually.
I mean, you can send in your recommendations because you're the advisory committee to the commission and make your recommendations. But like I said before, in order to get those in so the commission can review them, and then if they like them all or none or some, they can pass that on down so that we can do our due diligence and looking at how best that those can be fit into the budget. And then we have to present back to the commission on what our findings. Okay. The earlier the better to get any recommendations to. Now I put a general update in there under MDT. We have that meeting for the Benton. We have an update coming forward on the Lola Shepherd stuff. We haven't seen any materials on the Lola Shepherd's project as far as what they're planning to have a discussion about. But right now we have some general comments as far as connectivity, but there's also some impacts to adjacent property owners because of the size of the roundabout that we're hoping that we can have some discussion with them to mitigate those so that they're not as impactful, just so that we can have a standard roundabout out there.
And so those two meetings, one on Benton, one on Lola Shepherd, are those can those be public meetings?
I don't know if they put that out for the public. MDT set them up, I can ask tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, you can just send it to the members when those are available, if they're, I assume they're public meetings.
Yeah, I'll ask them.
Okay. Did you hear anything on Prospect Avenue? What they're planning there?
They're looking at a few things. I don't remember all of them, but one of them was the crossing at Sanders there, which they all said that from the beginning up on 11th, why'd you take the signal out? Now they're looking at crossing opportunities down on Prospect. So I know that they've been doing a lot of surveying. I didn't get a full rundown of
Okay.
what they're doing.
I mean, it looks like they're doing something substantial, and obviously something substantial is probably 5 years
Or more.
away.
Yeah.
So, but it's a chance for improvement.
Yeah.
And
then the only other one was at Montana up by the Capitol. I think I saw that they had scheduled a meeting to discuss some, but I wasn't available for that meeting. I think Mark is going, and I don't remember exactly when that is.
okay, that's the state safety study they're doing west of the Capitol. Okay, good, because last I checked after our meeting last month, so they're still working on it.
Well, they have. I think they have a draft report, but I'm not sure if they have that published yet or not.
Is that in conjunction with the capital grounds improvement plan?
I don't think it has anything to do. I don't think it's directly tied to the campus plan that
Sure.
the Capitol has. I think I know that they've had one that's been out there for quite some time. And that had a lot of pedestrian facilities included in there.
Yeah.
I think they were just, I'm not sure if they're revising that or tweaking it, but I know some of the things that they asked for, we had commented on. They had some depressed curb cuts that were crossing it, not mid-block, not quarter block, kind of weird crossings that we requested they take out, and they did. And they did put some ADA ramp, compliant ADA ramps.
I don't think, I assume there's no update on the Lindale and Montana Bozeman crossings.
We've seen supply comments back, and I think we're just trying to schedule it since Christmas coming, just got pushed off until January.
Okay. No, I was gonna note that Helena Middle School walked to Carroll. They go to a Carroll basketball game. So they actually had a private security guard stop traffic on Lindale there. So more reasoning why there needs to be a protected crossing there. And Sarah's not on here, but another reason why we need walkability. There was a lot of students from my daughter that was one of the walkers that had difficulty walking from Helena Middle School to Carroll College, and so public health issue, it's not that far, and we want to encourage people to be able to walk that distance and have an active lifestyle.
Well, we put in grants for them, and they rise to the top. So
yeah, and it's not just that. I mean, it's sidewalk. If we have sidewalk, people are going to walk. So it's everything. It's all of the above. So, yeah. All right. Any other questions for Dave? Seeing none, we'll move on to Sarah. She is not here. We did have a walk audit on Rodney 11th. So we'll talk about that next month, and then she will be scheduling walk on it on Idaho Avenue behind HMS. So that's where the 15-mile school zone will be posted, but we'll look at potential other options there too. So, and then moving on to the report from HPD, Lieutenant Zander, the floor is yours.
Don't have a lot to report today. The only thing that does come to mind is we had a big Carroll College event here this last month where all the schools were invited to some sort of a basketball game they had there. And I know we had officers controlling traffic so all the kids could safely get over there, and controlling so the buses could get in and out of that event. And that's the only thing I really have to report other than just our regular day-to-day stuff. Always open for questions.
And a neighbor said she witnessed drove by afterwards and saw what looked like a biker by Jefferson School. I think it was the northeast corner. Was there any report of a bike accident there on Broadway?
Not to my knowledge, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Unfortunately, I just don't review all the reports every day. So I can certainly check into that for you if you'd like.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, and you can report back next month. I'd be curious to know any pedestrian bike incidents. Okay. That'd be helpful if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on, I've got here complete street implementation. So there are a few different projects that are kind of in the works. 6th Avenue, there's a planned mill and fill. We provided recommendations, TA project, for over around Helena High. There's 2 6th Ward projects. So Dave, I guess, are we expecting, are those going to be complete street compliant?
So the Helena High one, I'm assuming you're referring to the 6th Ward ADA ramps.
There was a TA project
That's
around Helena High.
That's the 6th Ward area.
Yeah. Yep.
So we went out for proposals for design build and ended up rejecting the proposal that we received because I couldn't in good conscience recommend a project that was going to cost $16,000 per ramp, not corner, per ramp. That was just astronomical pricing, considering that we pay at the city when we're doing just a standard ADA ramp, even with the improvements that we're doing by doing concrete fillets and pedestrian curb, we're only paying about $6. So there was just too far a gap there too. So we're actually meeting with MDT on Monday, I believe it is, to try to reorganize how that is presented, to basically say they have an IDIQ, which is indefinite, something in indefinite quantity. So basically what we want to do is go out and say we have X dollars, contractors, whoever can install the most ADA compliant ramps for the money, basically gets the award. And we'll see on that. We have a little bit of legwork to do in front of that, because if we do that, we don't want them just picking and choosing from the bigger area. So we're going to basically prioritize the ramps, basically starting around the schools and getting those basically some backbone travel corridors to and from the schools and to and from destination areas, and then filling in the kind of the gaps around those primary routes. So we'll be working on that as soon as we get the go ahead from MDT.
But can we get complete street features rather than just curb ramps?
So the project is only for ADA ramps.
Can we change the project?
Well, I'll ask.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
They were pretty stringent on the last time around, that's why we had to bid it the way we did. And their understanding, even though the project changed a bit. So that's what the meeting is on Monday, to try to, I guess, implement some flexibility so that we have an opportunity to provide a good product at a good or at a lower cost per unit. That'll make those funds go as far as we can. But I'll update you at the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, we asked that there be integration with MTAC prior to implementation. For
So it'll give you an update next meeting.
yeah, and then like 6th Avenue. I mean, is there plans for bulb outs or other complete street? But the commission direction is to provide a complete street there.
And we gave them that this was a maintenance project, and they were fine with what we were moving forward with, of getting our ADA ramps installed so that we actually have accessibility around the city as the priority, and then the bulb outs being come in after that.
So you've got commission direction not to put in complete street features.
We reported back to the commission that this was a maintenance project, and that's where we're doing this left.
But even the complete street policy is that it applies to maintenance.
It does, but it doesn't apply to everyone, because there are projects out there that aren't installing complete streets that are brand new.
That's why, but we can choose where we want complete street features.
Who can choose?
That public engagement, the public can.
I guess I'd have to prefer to the commission on that, because that's their realm, not mine.
So is there going to be further direction from the commission, or would I have to talk to the commission?
As far as we're concerned, we're stopping short of Davis because of the wonky S curves there at Davis and 6th, because that'll have to be engineered a little bit more. We want to narrow up that curve in there. There's a little bit of extra asphalt, so we want to bump those median islands out a bit to kind of constrict the traffic flow, so that we get some of that traffic calming features through that intersection. And then once we get that, that'll tie in up to basically the improvements up to Rodney. And then there's from Rodney west, there's a couple areas as you get closer to downtown that have some vault issues that we want to deal with in front of the ramp project, so we don't have to run into a vault in the middle of doing a ramp. So we're working with the landowners on that one.
Is there anything that the public can review prior to installing any improvements?
Just our corridor for our mill and overlay that's budgeted.
Like if we wanted bulb outs at Warren to Central School, how would we know if we're going to get bulb outs?
So that section's not being mill and overlaid at this point, because that's one of the sections that has some reported faults underneath it. At that 406 Realty or whatever that corner, that northeast corner building is. So that section isn't in the mill and fill project at this time, because we're working with the property owners on the vaults.
So the mill and fill is from Montana?
Basically
West.
Just short of Davis. I think that's Hoback.
So then when is the rest of it gonna hope to be done from Davis over?
Davis to Rodney, we're hoping to bring on probably a consultant to help us out on the design and MTAC is welcome to look at that as well. The problem with that corner is the south leg has a median island that only right now, the movements are right in, right out. I've witnessed numerous times that that's not followed. So the question of whether that median island needs to stay because it wasn't, I don't think, constructed as well as maybe it could have been back in the day, but I wasn't here when that was put in. So I don't know why it was installed the way it is, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So making that crossing better, because there is parking there that could be bulbed out and make that crossing narrower. The crossing from on the west leg, basically crossing 6th, isn't too bad, but the sight lines are troublesome for us because you put somebody out in the middle of that intersection and you know the sight lines aren't great with the buildings here. Then you get over to the north leg. So right now it crosses over onto the median island, then you run, then you walk along the median island, cross the basically turn lane to go northbound on Davis, and then you get onto the sidewalk and you keep on going. So that median island is one that we are talking about pushing the curb line out into the roadway about 5 feet to introduce some traffic calming. And then that crossing, if you look at it, is on the south side of it's either a fire hydrant or streetlight pole. We want to move that to the north side, which it makes more sense to get them lined up a little bit better. And then the last leg is that east leg, and there is no crossing opportunity on that east leg. With the configuration of the driveways that are on the south side, I think it's going to be very difficult to put in a crossing on there, but that's what we're kind of looking at.
My family uses that crossing on the east side, so I would prefer to have one.
Well, that's what we're trying to get that as a pedestrian friendly intersection. It's just locating it right so that we aren't introducing something that puts pedestrians in.
Yeah, and that's why I asked to be engaged on this. You know, at least I think we should have bulb outs on Beatty and Hoback as well. And you know, to me, I mean, this is the value of the public. How I use the city, I cross 6th Broadway and 11th way more than when I'm driving on, you know, going longitudinal. You know, so the bulb outs, being able to cross it is way more valuable than a mill and fill on the streets to me.
Maybe we should put that on the agenda to like really look at that in detail. I guess that intersection there. I don't know. I've been consistently curious about. Well, I have a beef about Davis Street, which is, I believe there's sidewalk basically all the way until you're half a block from middle school where it dies.
So if you can see this here, so this crossing right here, we're proposing to move over here so that we can get a perpendicular ramp. Right now it's really at a weird angle. And then as you can see the tire path here, that's why we're going to push this out to, you know, not only constrict it more so it feels tighter so people slow down, but it also really delineates this movement and the turn to northbound Davis. And unfortunately the tree shadows in the way there, but coming to this spot, one contemplation was to basically put a ADA ramp here and bring it over here. We had hoped that this would line up better so that we wouldn't have to, you know, take up as much of the green as we could, but it doesn't line up very well. So this moves it out. Now, there might be an opportunity to move this curb line out and push this curb line back so that it lines up a little bit better, but that's where we just have to get into the geometrics a little bit more and see. And then, like I was saying, this one over here, I'm not sure how useful that median island is. Because when I first arrived in Helena, I actually had to rent this apartment up here, and watching outside, there's just as many left turns there than there are right hand turns.
Yeah, it still provides value for a pedestrian crossing.
Well,
Safety.
so the idea was, if we remove it, would be to make these bulb outs bigger and extend this curb line out,
Yeah,
and then basically keep the crossing distance similar, but without that median island that, especially in the winter, doesn't get maintained the best.
yeah, I appreciate all this stuff. I see there could be potentially like 3 options, on how to do this intersection. I'd like to see ask that, MTAC review these 3 options and decide which ones we prefer, provide public input on them.
More than welcome to have that, do a work session or whatever, do it over the next, at the next meeting, and then, present that to the commission. I'll be here so we can talk about it, but it's just, we didn't want to go through this intersection without really having a conscious slow down and see what is best for this intersection, because with the sight lines, with the configuration, it's not the most friendly intersection or efficient intersection for pedestrian traffic. I don't want to spend money to do something that's not going to be effective or causes an issue, because
Yeah, and something that I frequent this intersection, and most of the time I'm going across it. So it's very valuable to my family.
So that's why we held off on coming across there through the middle section. So,
Okay. And then can we entertain the ideas of bulb outs at Davis and Holback also?
Davis doesn't intersect.
Or excuse me, Beatty and Holback further to the east.
At this time, there's
Raleigh's another street.
At this time, there's only money slated for the ADA ramps, like I said before. So,
But we can get, well, I should say that the complete street policy is a maintenance project, should be complete street compliant.
it doesn't require it to be. There's the discussion to be, so
But the public can require it to be if we want it to be.
you can request it.
Yeah.
And ask the commission, but you're more than welcome to put that as one of your recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the public should get what the public wants here. And if we want bulb outs at certain intersections, it seems to me that the ratepayers should get what we want.
Has the city and county accepted the complete street policy?
The city was established back in 12,
Okay.
13.
Yeah, it's
The county hasn't.
The county.
we've had a complete street policy for 13 years.
Okay. And then just the overlap of when maintenance projects are occurring, how does that overlap look like? Because what I'm hearing from you is it sounds like there's the mill and fill and there isn't any additional work done after that.
No, there's always additional work going on. The priority for the is to get ADA ramps in place where there are none. And every time we do a bulb out, that the cost of bulb outs takes away money for ADA ramps. So that's why we have to be strategic in looking at that. And the way that the city has looked at it is, we'll get the ADA ramps in with other projects, with grants, we can do enhanced crossings and continue to march across the city to try to get the ADA ramps in so that those accessible features are where we actually have sidewalks now. Where we don't have sidewalks, where there's nothing, then that's an entirely different topic.
Sure. So complete street features are mostly being paid for by grants and not by other funding sources, or is there a
No,
variety
I
of
wouldn't say
funding?
that because when we did reconstruction of Rodney, to the extent possible, the complete streets were implemented, and that was paid through with gas tax and street payments monies.
And it's a done deal at Hoback 6, right? I mean, we've gone through all that. I mean, how far did you guys get? 6th and Hoback. I mean,
As far as
they put in those ADA ramps there already, didn't they?
I don't remember exactly where they got the ADA ramps installed. We had some other things come up this summer that we didn't get as many ADA ramps installed.
I don't think we put any on. I don't think we have any on 6th.
Yeah, I think there's a few down on the east side down, but we had the same contractor got the sidewalk program and the ADA ramps, and so they were bouncing back and forth between the sidewalk program and the ADA ramps.
But the policy is, City of Helena hereby establishes policy to require the planning, design, construction, and maintenance of streets to work toward the goal of making complete streets in Helena complete streets. So it specifically includes maintenance in there, and
But it's worked towards, it's not requires to do every time.
but we can, the public shouldn't be engaged to decide where we want the complete streets. That's what
And I can have that public discussion as the entire city at a commission meeting, and so the other side is new projects coming in that choose not to install complete street projects or complete street features, so there's that also.
Yeah, and that's the public engagement is, to me, I see the value in putting bulb outs in strategic locations. But to just try and get as many ADA ramps in as possible, I don't necessarily agree with that policy. So, and that's part of the public engagement.
And this comes from my unfamiliarity with the complete streets policy, so forgive me if it's in there, but has there been any strategization as to what area? So you listed 3 streets on the agenda, and so is the goal to prioritize those 3 areas, or is there another document that is saying, as things happen or projects happen on 6, we want, the committee is prioritizing or giving the recommendation to prioritize X?
So I think the committees, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, your comment would be on every maintenance project we do complete streets. And our maintenance changes from year to year because mill and fills are designed to extend the life of the pavement so they can be used by everyone. So those are prioritized through our PCI index and through basically use. And we try to get through the city so that we can keep the streets traversable condition, and that's whether it's a mill and fill. So the mill and fill, since we add asphalt, that's what triggers doing ADA ramps if we're doing maintenance along that corridor. The other, in the court's eyes, a chip seal is purely maintenance. Mill and fill is considered an alteration. So that's why it triggers the ADA ramps. So that's why every summer you see us doing chip seals in parts of town and mill and fills in other parts. The chip seals are on a shorter time span. They're typically on a 7-year time rotation, so that that wearing surface is maintained. The mill and fills are on a longer duration just because they're more costly Just, and those are, we've been concentrating in certain areas of town to try to get those done to get some older streets that haven't seen any maintenance for some time, other than maybe a chip seal. So the CIP plan that we have in the budget shows kind of where we're going to be, and kind of projects where we're going to be in 5 years, but with increase in costs, those CIP plans kind of change, as everybody's does, because you still don't have you don't have the exact amount of money. Budget might go down, whatever other projects might be in, so you have to push things out. So it's a general guideline, I guess.
Yeah, I guess the way I read the complete street policy is that every mill and fill project, there should be a consideration of what complete street features can be implemented. And the public should get to decide how we want to spend our money.
Part of the complete street features an ADA route too. So
I understand, but there's a list of, I guess, I want to be able to make the decision.
And you can ask the commission if they want to start.
Well, the public, that the public should make the decisions.
Yeah, but be careful what you wish for, because maybe not everyone agrees.
Well, that's why you have the
at the end
dialogue.
of the day, and hopefully we do the right thing. And I mean, there's arguments on both sides of. I mean, you got to balance that. Well, you could do more ramps, or you could do. And I do agree with you, Greg. I think that some strategic bald outs, could be a priority in some places over just more ramps in other places.
So
but I mean, that's a discussion.
So part of the sidewalk summit is the fact that those strategic or bulb outs, everywhere, whatever, that's part of the sidewalk summit. Because obviously, if we're going to march through town with a bond or a district or whatever, those will have to be talked about as part of the funding. So.
Yeah, and I think, some of this can be part of the, LRTP update too, because we'll know, I don't know if you're projecting, we did 11.6 where we're looking at mill and fills, and that's the public component of, what are the strategic locations we want to look at. I agree, to put them on every intersection would be excellent, but, awesome, but we don't have the budget, we can't do that, but, if we can make improvements where we can, I think we should at least have the discussion on it. So. And then the 6 ward projects, the URD projects. I noticed that the Real Food Store, there was an ADA ramp put in there, because when we did the walk audit there and the 5-point study, they actually recommend trying to reduce that crossing distance. Was there any consideration with that project to implement the plan improvements there?
The Real Food Store?
Yeah.
I'd have to double check on that one.
So there's my screen there. My cursor doesn't really show up, but there's a ADA ramp about right where my cursor is. But what the 5-point intersection study recommended is, this crossing distance is insane. There, there's a way to try and. I mean, is that part of the URD project at all?
So some of those ramps were put in by NBT, and they put them in where they put them. We had a walk. We walked it with them a few years ago when they first talked about putting it, doing that project along Montana and Lindale, Euclid there. And we made comments and then, so that's part, we have meetings scheduled to, it came up at the League of Cities Conference, and it's come up before and and now after, that we're trying to sit down with MDT so that they, the ultimate hope is that they adopt each city's policies moving forward. So if they do a project, they would, sit down with the city and say, what is it, what applies here? That's the ultimate goal. Right now, we're just trying to get on the same page as far as them installing and fixing their stuff along their corridors. Working with the cities to try to, do better things like the crossing up, just west of here at Lindale and Warren there, or wherever that crossing would be. Working with them on the pedestrian crossing at Montana and Bozeman there to try to get those, basically, if the city does the project development, the public participation, and they come up with an idea that is feasible for in MDT's eyes, then they would approve it so that it can be built, since it is within the city.
So, sorry, where was it hoped that we could put a crossing that we tried to get a grant for, but it's failed?
Greg, you want to go west there?
Clear up at Warren Street.
Right now it's at Logan.
Stop my share, Dave.
You might need to, because my mouse is dying over here. I'll get it. Not back. So there's the crossing of Warren. So we looked at putting either a hawk or a mast arm RFP there. Some of the comments that they had was they felt that there might be more right of way needed for the poles, and they didn't like the bulb outs that were planned. But the bulb outs would only be taking up the parking lane that's there, so it wasn't impeding the traffic. From my recollection, those were the two of the comments that I remember at that intersection.
Yeah, but the planned crossing is at Rodney, isn't it?
Right there, so it leads people down to Kendrick Field. I'll double check.
Yeah, I think it was. I remember having the discussion with Sarah from RPA years ago when we were doing the 5-point intersection study, and I thought that the Rodney ended up being the recommended.
Well, Rodney doesn't really intersect with Lindale.
Yeah, I mean, it goes, directly north of Helena Middle School. So that's the Ewing, the Rodney and Ewing, they all come together.
Yeah,
right there.
One of our great diagonal streets.
Okay. Moving on, the MPO implementation. So you said their budget amendment, and are you working on the interlocal agreement that would create the MPO?
The MPO has been designated by the governor already. We're working on the interlocal with the county in East Helena to basically lay out how it's all going to work. And then there's a 3Cs agreement, there's a PL agreement, there's a performance agreement, there's one other one I think I'm missing from MDT that will all be,
Can the MPO be, the municipal planning organization, would it be better suited to have it under the community development department?
right now with the discussion with the county and the city manager, and it's slated to be in the transportation department.
Can we request it to be in the community development department?
Requested up to the commissioner, yeah. And then once all those other agreements are done, the next step is the UPWP, which is the Unified Work Plan. And that basically is going to be really simple for us because all we have is to get going, and basically the biggest thing out of the gate that the MPO needs is an LRTP. We can't do anything without an LRTP.
So can MTAC be involved on the selection committee for the MPO person?
I can ask.
Okay. We'd prefer to have, I request to have somebody on there if available. So.
Great. I have a question for Dave. In terms of a time frame on the MPO, what's your best guess? And the reason I have a personal interest in this, because I've been told by the deputy clerk that my application to this committee, which I put in August, is on hold pending implementation of the MPO. And so I'm curious about the time frame.
So most of the agreements that we have are pretty much done. They just have one final review with the county, East Helena, and MDT. And then once we make these final tweaks, which hopefully will happen before the end of the year, then they'll get put on the agendas for the commissions to sign. And then those will be done. MPO will be implemented. Again, the UPWP would be drafted. PCC and the TAC, the Policy Coordinating Committee, and the Technical Advisory Committee would be convened, formed, except bylaws, similar to the process that you all went through with the bylaws. And then they would set their meeting schedules for moving on into the future.
And, excuse me, and could you just go over those two committees?
So the Policy Coordinating Committee is made up basically right now of mostly elected officials: the mayor of East Helena, the mayor of Helena, the commission chair of the county, and two other members. They do policy. They're the Policy Coordinating Committee. And then the TAC, which is the Technical Advisory Committee, has 11 members on it. One member right now is a non-motorized member that I put on there. So they are there to basically advise the PCC. So the PCC comes up with, hey, we want to do this project. The Technical Advisory Committee is the one to go out, gather information, whatever needs to happen, and then they report back to the PCC.
And the Technical Advisory Committee is appointed by whom?
It's appointed through the process, through PCC and the formation of the MPO, and they're made up of technical, basically advisory experts in the different fields between the county, East Helena, city, public, what have you.
But this interlocal agreement, the first step, that'll set the framework.
Yes.
That's what I'm, can we review a draft of the interlocal agreement?
I can check. I mean, it's just a pretty basic interlocal agreement that says we're all going to come together and do this MPO. And the one little difference that we have compared to other MPOs is they designate strict splits for who's going to cover what. And what we elected to do instead, because there are such diverse projects that some could be entirely in the East Helena, some could be in the county, some could be in Helena, some could cross borders. So each one of those projects will have an individual project agreement, and then that is where the splits will be figured out, that it's 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever it ends up being, so that you know, East Helena doesn't pay for a project in Helena and vice versa, you know.
So I was gonna ask, the MTAC members, 'cause it's, do you have, it's not real, I don't know if it needs an action item, but do you have any issue with me letting the commission know our preferences that the MPO would be within the community development department? That's how I've seen all the other cities run them. Personally, I think it would function better that way. Do you have any objection on behalf
So I
of?
guess I don't feel like I understand it.
So an MPO, beginning of, you have to exceed the 50,000 during the census. If your urban boundary, whatever they designate there, you exceed the 50,000 population, then you move into this metropolitan planning organization. And what that does is that opens up federal monies for both implementation of studies and implementation of projects, and also transit. So what comes out of the MPO is like the LRTP, there's a number of other plans that are required to be completed and maintained at a specific interval. And a lot of those plans have to deal with, well, transportation for one, mobility, pedestrians, transit. I mean, it's an all modes group or organization. So a quick, rough summary of it.
So are these committees, have there been like meetings of it already? Is it public?
No, because we just were designated a month ago, or a little over a month ago.
So Greg, what is your reasoning behind wanting to say that
Well,
it shouldn't be in the transportation department?
I just think like a planning department is like the MPO, it adds a layer of bureaucracy, and a planner is better at engaging the public, and coming up with collective decision making, recommendations.
Can I add, Greg, to that? I think that another benefit of engaging with community development is integration and larger community planning, is that transportation is one component versus when you're thinking about transportation in connection to housing or community growth. And so it's just one added benefit. There is a large overlap, I think, with both divisions, but it's just, how do you want to engage community development as a part of the MPO?
And really, the way they're kind of moving as a transportation industry is, for all the grant applications, you don't do level of service analysis. That's not a decision factor. The more decision factor is public engagement and how the project actually benefits the community, creates community resiliency, rather than just moving traffic. And that's a better community development exercise.
And part of the MPO requirements is a public participation plan and how it gets developed. And there are certain beds that have to be in that plan. And then on the TAC, there's not only engineers on there, but there's planners, and everyone is involved, so that more holistic look at what the MPO is doing is conducted and reviewed. So this isn't done in a vacuum. There's cooperation with a lot of internal city, county, city of East Helena, Um, whether it's community development, engineering, or the public. There's emergency services that are, looked at. There's a number of things that are required by the feds. So it's not done in a vacuum is that only one department would have, I guess, their view. It's a very holistic view, and having those 11 members on the TAC as it sits now, and then the TAC and the PCC can expand that. We, in our discussions, the reason why we stopped at 11 was just because the bigger the group you make, the harder it is to make calendars work. So we figured 11 with the was a good number to start with, and then it could be expanded as needed as the MPO gets up and running.
So is that public who has been placed on it, like who it is?
I can't remember some of the makeup, but like I said, there's a non-motorized at large.
That's why I asked if we could get a copy of the draft interlocal agreement so we could see the structure.
And Greg, Dave, so this committee, the TAC is already established. There are individuals, or they have not yet been selected. There are categories, but no individuals slotted in. What's the status of that committee?
So the committee doesn't get formed until some of these agreements get signed. And then the PCC has their first meeting, and they basically they adopt their bylaws, they establish certain things. There's a whole kind of script that they have to go through for their first meeting, and then it starts rolling.
And
So
PCC will then appoint the TAC,
they designate the TAC, yes.
so they will choose the members of the TAC, the PCC.
Some of the members are already, because they're like the community development director for the city and the county are on there. The school district somewhere in there. I don't remember all the.
So there's certain categories, and then there's some leeway also within that. Am I understanding?
Well, after they're initially formed, they can expand their role or the roles as they see fit. So it's not dependent upon one entity saying we want to do this. It's the TAC that decides, or the PCC that decides how many or what they want the makeup to look like.
So then is our committee superfluous, and then we get dissolved after it's MTech like out after this is done, or like?
I don't know. I put a member at large. I didn't designate it a city or a county. I didn't say it's an MTAC member. I just put it on a non-motorized advocate at large, or however I worded it, so that there would be representation for the non-motorized side on the TAC.
I think Missoula is a good example. So there's the PCC, there's the TAC, and then there's a bike ped advisory council. So there are all three that can coexist. But that's dependent on whatever the city makeup is.
That's what it'd be great if we can get a copy of the interlocal agreement, just so we can.
And then with the MPO, the caveat is all three entities have to be represented. So in the case of Missoula, I think it's Missoula County and Missoula that all have representation on that, like whatever pedestrian, whatever the mobility committee is there. There's other places that have similar, that are kind of the similar makeup that we are, where there's two cities in a county or two counties in the city that all make up those groups so that everybody's represented.
So Broadwater County is not a part of this.
No.
Okay.
Our boundary stop at the Jefferson County, basically this eastern border of East Helena's city limits, and then it skinnies up and comes across Highway 12, and then it kind of goes up I-15 a little ways up to and then comes back down is what the boundary that they designated the 50,000, but the planning area is different. There's the planning area is actually what the initial boundary that we're proposing is what has been included in the LRTP for at least the last couple. Is it goes out to basically Silver City, comes down Bird's Eye, basically south to Jefferson County, across Jefferson County border, out past East Helena, not quite to the lake, but pretty close to the lake boundary out there, and then across to kind of tie in the whole Helena Valley as part of the.
Will include Montana City?
No.
Can it include Montana City?
It can.
The planning area.
I mean, it could. It hasn't been contemplated. We didn't include it in the boundary that designates the planning area because they didn't want to cross the county. MDT didn't want to cross the county line, I believe, and that the biggest hurdle that Montana City, I mean, we all felt that Montana City was going to be included just because we're so close, but the way the census blocks worked, there was a gap between South Helena and Montana City that basically excluded them from being included in the 50,000 or plus boundary.
Well, I'll advocate that we should add Montana City in the planning area because the Prickly Pear Land Trust, that's their ultimate plan, is their Prickly Pear corridor is to create a big loop around there. So that essentially is a non-motorized corridor, so to exclude it from a planning area would be bad planning. Okay. So we'll advertise for MPO personnel in January.
Sometime, yeah.
And then the LRTP RFQ, would that be under the purview that as soon as we hire an MPO planner?
Depending on when all the agreements get signed. So we have to sign some agreements in succession to, like I said, the UPWP has to be done, and that allocates the PL funds. And once all those, but yes, generally once the MPO, the LRTP, the plan is will soon follow so that we can get going on it, because we had requested that we were able to do that this past year, but MDT's interpretation of the MPO regs are anything done before designation and establishment doesn't count. So we felt it wouldn't be a good expenditure of funds to start on something that didn't count.
Yeah, just for MTAC members to know, Missoula has a phenomenal LRTP update, and that's what I think we should try and strive for with ours. Okay. Let's move on because it's getting late. The downtown multimodal plan recommendations. I spoke with John Dendy. He's the executive director of downtown Helena. He was going to try and make it tonight. It's typically the second week of every month is like the meeting week, so they actually had their board meeting tonight. He thought he was going to try and make it, but it must have ran late. So I'll further coordinate with him. I did mention to him that, one of our priorities were the crossings on Broadway and 6th across Cruz, and he also recognized the importance of those to downtown Helena. So we'll no action items on that now. We can wait till maybe John. I'll reach out to John again and see if he can attend next month. Member communication proposals for future agenda items. Stop sign is yield sign for bicyclists. Some of these I'm ready to take off the list, but this one kind of came back because I see there's some momentum in Missoula on trying to do this at the local level. And I don't know if you guys, MTAC members, are interested in requesting a legal opinion from the city attorney on the applicability of how a stop sign is yield sign. mimic the Idaho stop law would work at the local level. And we can defer this till next month too. I wouldn't mind asking the question. Anyway.
Well, maybe we could see how Missoula does.
And that's what I would love to see it, you know, and do something at, you know, like the clean air ordinance, you know, is do something at the local level and hopefully it expands to a state level. And if there's any place that could do it, Missoula seems like a place that it might be more palatable there. So the other, so I'm going to leave that on the list. And then the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, unless otherwise posted, I'm going to cancel, take that one off the list. I think it's a kind of a dead issue unless we want to try and change state law. But, you know, the thing we do have are, you know, school zones, you know, like around school, but actually read the MUTCD, and a school zone is a very broad definition. So it doesn't have to be immediately adjacent to a school. So even 11th, 6th, and Broadway can be considered school zones, you know, because it's crossing, you're crossing those to get to, you know, you got Central, Helena Middle School, Jefferson, Helena High, there's a preschool there, there's several schools in the area. So there's ways to strategize there if we want to. And then CIP, Dave, I've looked on the website. I don't see that at all. It's in the budget. Okay. The National Avenue Argyle, it's getting late. We'll postpone that till later. Long-term goals, MTech visioning, just the, you know, I think, you know, we've got some good thoughts, and that can be LRTP issues, the zoning changes, parking minimum, building placement. I actually was browsing because Gallatin County Bozeman got, you know, a bunch of money through the Safe Streets for All. They have a SAFE program, Streets Are For Everyone program, and it's actually pretty good. Some of it's just policy stuff, but they do get into actually what we talked about earlier, but their complete street policy doesn't necessarily apply to maintenance, and they're going to change it, you know, so that they recognize that if you're doing maintenance, that might be an opportune time to incorporate complete street policy. But they also have, you know, these broader issues, policy issues like zoning, you know, building placement, you know, trying to reduce parking. The other thing they have in there that they recognize is from a traffic engineering standpoint, you know, you design intersections on a level of surface C at the peak hour. And what that means is you end up building intersections outrageously large, you know. The way things are kind of moving is you should be looking at a level of service C during a 24-hour period, you know, because of it, we just can't build our way out of traffic congestion. So that's another policy issue that they're looking at in Bozeman. So I'll send out a link to that, and that's something maybe we'll look at as a policy issue. A recommendation is to develop a SAFE program in Helena. And then I got on here the traffic calming program. You know, that's something as a policy issue we could look at too. Dave, has there been a traffic calming project been implemented through the traffic calming program?
Not since I've been here.
That's what I thought. I wasn't aware of any either, and that's why I think the traffic
snails.
And I think that was. I think that, you know, I don't think that was even technically the traffic calming program per se. Feature, but you know, there's this. The city has a traffic calming program, but if it hasn't implemented anything, it's not really a program. So I think
it's a program, and it has certain standards, and a lot of the people that apply for the traffic calming program don't meet those standards for city participation, but that doesn't mean that they can't that corridor, that intersection or whatever, can't implement a SID to implement the traffic calming features that were desired.
Yeah, that's where I think we can talk about the traffic calming program, or, what are the standards, and what are the funding mechanisms, to actually see some implementation. That's something we can review. So. But I'll send out the traffic calming form to members. It's written like an engineer. It's engineering-ish. Meetings of, interest announcements. The 6-word neighborhood plan, I reached out to the planning department. That's still in progress, so I'll just keep checking on that. And then we talked about the Montana Avenue safety study. Dave, if that is available for public consumption, if you get a draft, I'd appreciate if you could send it. I'll keep reaching out to Tyrell at MDT also. So, public comment on any item not on the agenda. And Logan, have anything?
Sure, I can share.
You can go first.
Okay. So I'm Logan Smith. I'm the executive director of Bike Walk Montana. And so it's great to be here and see more at the local level. Bike Walk is more advocacy at the statewide level, as well as working to pass bills that are important to our local communities. And so I think that the more I can be involved in hearing what policies you're interested or have appetite for, either at the local or to pass up to the state level. So I know, Greg, you skipped through a few of these that said they might be a better fit at the statewide level. That's something that we're really interested in seeing how we can support the local level. And then just as a side note, I am a Helena resident as well. And so excited to hear about some of the issues that you've raised, and access 6th Avenue quite a bit myself. So have personal thoughts there, not the viewpoint of Bike Walk Montana, but happy to be here.
And I'm new to Helena relatively, and it's kind of off to one side, but several cities have a preferential incentive program that their employees use non-motorized transit or non-private cars to get. And so I'm throwing this out to the committee, since I don't know how long it'll take for me to become a member. I think I'm setting some sort of record. I started in August, right? But anyway, I throw that out because I think it would be a great way it's a policy, so it fits within your realm. It would be a great way for the city to set a model for other employers. I don't know whether there's any program like this in Helena, but lots of cities have it. And so anyway, I throw that out. The second thing is, I'm glad to meet you. I am trying to find who does bicycle safety for kids. And I have yet to find this. So again, I'm throwing this out. I would be glad to help with this in May. I think that's when we should do it. And I have a 10-year-old grandchild who is a menace, and it can't be done just by her parents and grandparents. It needs to be institutional, because her friends aren't wearing helmets. They're careening all over the road. So anyway, again,
In terms of like a class,
well, Japan, Germany, other countries do a very well thought out program. It could start out with what a lot of cities do, where you just do some in class talking about things, and then you have a bike rodeo, and maybe the police come and do a bike train around the neighborhood. Since I haven't found that it already exists, I'm suggesting, since my granddaughter goes to Central, that we focus on Central, and any other school where somebody would do it. But start small, and but it's got to be done. It's very dangerous what she is doing and what her friends are doing. A 10-year-old friend of hers, and she rode on the friend's electric bike, right? And this is just crazy, right? Because they're careening all of it. It's dangerous for all of us. So anyway, I throw that out because I'd be glad to help with it. And I think we need it. And I think, again, it's a fun thing. that would get everybody, who can be opposed to keeping kids safe on bicycles. So anyway, I throw those two things out that I'd really like to see this committee get engaged with.
Just to build off of that, and there's other counties that utilize the local public health departments to put on events such as that. So maybe that's something to bring up with Sarah to see if there's any interest in local public health taking that on.
I asked her.
Oh, you did? Okay.
The plate is full.
Yeah. So,
but it could be. It's too big for any one entity to take on, but again, you take one school and you get a coalition of people, that, each person takes a little piece and you start small and you develop a program that it's easily replicable at all the schools. But yes, I mean, maybe if Sarah didn't think they had to do it all themselves,
exactly.
they could do a piece of it, absolutely.
Yeah, even just a 1 week or couple day curriculum at the elementary schools through the PE department, physical education department. Yeah, I mean, because I mean, my kids learned by experience, and then doing Jim Barnes's Mountain Bike 101 class, which is more mountain biking rather than riding on the street.
And apparently in Japan, they have things set up in a park. So maybe Centennial Park would be a good place where you could set up some, I don't know what, right? Because I have no idea what the Japanese, but we don't need to reinvent this.
I think there's a lot of ways you can do it. You just jogged my memory too, so thank you. Is that Bike Walk has some plans for 2024, just the committee should be aware of. So we're planning on doing a commuter challenge statewide in June. So that's something that you all might be interested in. And then in preparing for the 2025 legislative session, we have some ideas to do here in Helena to show what complete streets could look like, or what different infrastructure, and do demonstration projects to get people excited for the 2025 legislative session, which could pair really well with your idea and engage schools or kids and that type of thing. So just some things to look forward to, and we'll definitely have to talk some more.
So I would suggest maybe we could put both those things on the agenda in terms of what Ann brought up for next time or upcoming agenda.
Yeah, and that's where it kind of our list keeps getting longer. But I think that's what like the new MPO person could be, somebody that strategizes or implements a commuter incentive. I know like Laura Erickson, when she was at the county, she organized one kind of as a volunteer type thing, but it's kind of went to the wayside. I'd like to see it with state employees. There's a lot of state employees that they, I think, well, what is it? Try another way, state employees. I've seen that acronym. But I think we can try and encourage more people to walk because it puts a smile on your face rather than being in a metal box. So,
and it was something that we had talked about a lot in the past was, sort of demonstration projects. But I guess not to go back to the discussion that we already moved on from, but I don't think that it costs $10,000 to create a bulb out, and you can get a couple of flower pots and a couple of cones and create a bulb out for $500 and try it and gather public input, and just do it instead of studying it. And as we've suggested in the past, make a bike lane, get a movable crosswalk sign and put up a crosswalk. And that's what the state was doing, studying it. Then they took it down and everyone realized that they preferred it. you know, I mean, that, to me, that having a great plan is great, but yeah, my personal experience is, you know, doing something, just doing something, anything will get you a lot further than having a perfect plan that never really gets done or implemented. So, you know, maybe in the big picture, that's just something that a thought, I guess, is, you know, I mean, there should be the ability within the city, or, you know, whatever organization, planning organization is coming up to, you know, to do stuff like that. And say, well, we're going to try a bike lane here, and just try it, and not, you know, we're going to try a bulb out here and see how it works, and not have to spend, you know, exorbitant amount of money to build it first and see if, yeah, I mean, maybe people don't like it. Well, you can take it back down. You know,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. Maybe we do that on 6, is put temporary bulb outs and get public feedback. Does Bike Walk Montana still have some of that stuff? Because we did that one on Beatty Street, and unfortunately, a lot of people didn't like the traffic circle.
It's a hard sell in a lot of places.
Yeah, it slows you down. Of course it does, you know, that's the point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. I mean, so many kids crossed 6th to go to school, and so picking an area that has a great amount of traffic, foot traffic and bicycle traffic would be great. Happy to share what we have at Bike Walk.
Okay, I'll put that on the list. Temporary traffic calming measures, features.
so I feel like our last best opportunity to, you know, advocate for any specific budget priorities is next meeting.
January.
If we want to communicate any specific requests to the city commission in a timely way so that they can be budgeted for.
Yeah, because
we're going to need to discuss that.
Would that be the proper protocol, Dave, is to send our comments to the budget, or send our comments to the commission on the budget prior to you?
Yeah,
preparing the budget.
If the commission agrees with you, then we get directed to evaluate them and see what the pros and cons, and then we have to come back and present to the commission, and then they can give direction. So that's not a 1 or 2 week turnaround type thing.
Just along this line, strategically, if the committee can find groups like this, and maybe the senior center or the YMCA, groups that would also support the policies that this group is recommending, it would probably go over be a lot more effective with the commission. If it isn't just the MTAC, but they see that there's broad public community support for.
Yeah, and that's where I'd like, you
CTOs.
know, the downtown Helena, you know, like those crossings on Cruise are kind of low hanging fruit, you know, those that's been part of, I think it was part of the LRTP, and now it's part of the new downtown plan. You know, there's already been, it's been in numerous vetted plans already, you know. So that's one that we could ask for, you know, the bulb outs on Broadway, you know, by Jefferson School. I'd like to.
But there are a bunch of churches. I mean, I bet that some of the churches would go for some of the stuff that you all are talking about. The parent organizations at every school should be on board with this. And if the commission get three groups besides you all, they may go, oh, wow.
I do think it's smart to choose what you want to strategize budget wise. before that's communicated, so that groups like Bike Walk could have clear direction and be able to say, yes, this is what we're interested in or not. And so that way there's consensus among all groups as opposed to a blanket statement of prioritizing bike ped where, you know, here's what the committee has talked about. We're in agreement that this is what Helena should prioritize.
Okay. And we can have some dialogue, you know, without a quorum, you know, to talk about things too. So, because we're running out of time here, but you know, my preference is, things that we've got already documents on, you know, like those crews. I see tremendous value in those. I actually like to see the Benton turn lane widening project canceled. I think the money's better spent on other things. Bulb outs on Broadway by Jefferson School. We've got MDT actually recommended those. One project piece we talked from years ago was putting stop signs over on Saddle Drive to get to Selma Hill Park. I was reminded of that because I came in from the south side last weekend. And it's just, people should be able to walk to a park. And those are small things, you know, the bulb outs at Jefferson and, stop signs, those are relatively small things, but I mean, they're important to the community.
Well,
They also add up.
And perhaps also just supporting transportation department in some of the things that they want to do, and just, I guess, backing them up in terms of the crossing on Montana. I don't know. I guess that's a maybe a discussion for another day, but I think we should have that discussion to make that list, and maybe next meeting have some action items.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that'll move to the top of the list. Yeah. Okay, my battery's running low. It's 7:15.
So Greg, you have it scheduled for 3:09. We had, we had gotten the room back when we were having the issues with the Alzheimer's meeting. So I'd already scheduled 4:26. So I'll see if I can't change it to 3:09 down here, so we have the technology available. So leave the agenda 3:09 until I get back to him and let you know if it's 3:09 or.
Okay.
We're still.
No, this room works well. And if the Alzheimer group wants the other room.
I don't know if they're there.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the scheduling conflict was today. So I just wanted to let you know, since it said
I don't with you, but I
Okay, but next month we'll be in this room.
we're scheduled for 4:26. I'm gonna see if I can move it to 3:09.
Sure.
Like the agenda says, and if I can, I'll move it, but I don't wanna move one or two meetings to 3:09, and then we have to be
So email us.
4:26 because this is already taken.
Okay, it's
So
just
I'll reach out to you if I can't get this for the next year scheduled out. And then see what your preference is, depending on what conference there are.
January, well, resuming and how.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Yeah. You wanna grab a coffee?